guys, it's Ruby and we're back for chapters 6 through 10 of Donkerweb. So we've covered the prologue through chapter 5 and now we'll be starting this one. Hoofstuk 6 says, Die goed wat jy met jou saamdra. So essentially where we've left off is in chapter 5, the chapter kind of ends around Oom Dirk Schutter, aka Lisa's dad, aka Plunk's girlfriend's father, has absolutely forbid Lisa from seeing Greg and Plunk because of Greg's history. That leading us into chapter 6 where Greg is feeling absolutely awful. Here's the reason that Plunk and Lisa are no longer allowed to be together. Lisa, following her dad's orders, has absolutely ghosted Plunk. So in the summary notes you'll see it says, Plunk is ontsteld omdat Lisa nie meer sy boodskappen antwoord nie. So basically Lisa is not replying to any of her messages. She has gone ghost cold turkey. Greg is obviously upset because despite the fact he is thousands of kilometers away from home, his legacy, or his dad's legacy, is still haunting him in this place of new beginnings. So this would roughly translate into Greg denk aan al die mense wat hom dees day herken. So he thinks about all the people that recognize him. And Greg further follows this in saying hy is nie sy pa nie, maar hy dra sy naam en reputasie. So he's not his dad, but he still carries his name and reputation. Almost feeling to which he's like a clone of his father. Plunk is obviously trying to be a very good friend throughout this. He's trying to like assure Greg, like, no, you're not your dad, live your own life, this is your story, you and your dad, Chris and Greg, you're very different people. Also emphasizing the fact that, you know, you can't really change your dad's past, you can't undo what he's done, like you may as well make the most of yourself, your life. And upon further thinking, Greg takes it upon himself to go, well, what if I try to reduce my dad's sentence, you know, kind of deduct how fatal his actions were by finding the baker. And this is the point in the book where Greg decides, you know what, I'm going to find the baker. I'm going to try and free my dad's name as much as I can because he can't be going down for this alone, you know? So Greg besluit om die baker te probeer opspoor. So he decides he's going to start finding the baker. Hoofstuk 7, Tape Machine. This chapter is basically just covering Greg's commitment into finding the baker and figuring out who he is. So Greg has now gone and decided he's going to make a list of qualities about the baker to kind of narrow down the suspects and try and pinpoint what he should know about the baker in order to pin it to the right person. What we currently know about the baker now is that he is a man, he is intelligent, he's intelligent, he is naby Chris Owens' ouderdom, so he's close to Chris Owens' age. Hy weet baie van chemie, virologie and viruses, so he knows a lot about chemistry, virology and viruses because, you know, he made the flu vaccine. But unfortunately, all in all, he is onbekend. He's still unknown. In doing more research, Greg comes across a photo of his dad and a man called Dr. Rian Trollope. So naturally, Greg starts to thinking, what if Rian Trollope is the baker? Now, pretty important information is that the only reason that Greg can recognize who Dr. Rian Trollope is because he remembers Dr. Rian Trollope being at a house party that his family threw, like, way back in the day. And on top of that, John found him incredibly creepy, like just bad vibes, veiny hands, old. John was not messing with Doctor. So in the prologue where I explain who the butcher is, Doc Pina, the owner of Ultramed Plus, I want you to keep in mind that Ultramed Plus was more like a front company for Project Nursery Rhyme to happen. So they kind of needed that business to be there so they could sell the flu vaccines. So Greg remembers this and he's like, oh my gosh, let me go into the Ultramed Plus website and try to see what I can find about Dr. Rian Trollope, right? But unfortunately, the website is no longer there. But then Greg had an idea. There is an internet archive called the Wayback Machine, and what the Wayback Machine is, it's essentially this like browser that you can use to try and reboot and find old websites that are no longer up. So Greg uses this archive browser, the Wayback Machine, to go now and recover the old Ultramed Plus website to see what he can find. And when he gets there, he sees photos of Dr. Rian Trollope on the website. So Greg is absolutely ecstatic. He's think that he's just like hit the jackpot, he figured out who the baker is, he's gonna get his revenge. But unfortunately, when he dug a little deeper, finding more information about Dr. Rian Trollope, he found out that Rian Trollope was sentenced to prison for child pornography. Not only was he just arrested and sent to prison for child pornography, he hung himself in the prison. So this leaves Greg incredibly unsettled because now he's assuming, well, I can't find the baker if the baker's dead. And that concludes chapter 7. So here's just a quick Afrikaans translated version of what happens. Greg maak 'n lys van wat hy van die baker weet, so he makes a list of what he knows about the baker. Die baker is naby Chris Owens' ouderdom, hy is 'n man, hy is intelligent, hy weet baie van chemie, virologie en viruses. So he's a man close to Chris Owens' age, he's intelligent and he knows a lot about chemistry, virology and viruses. Hy wonder of Dr. Trollope die baker is, so he wonders if Rian Trollope is the baker. Then Greg kyk op die Ultramed Plus webblad en sien die foto is verwyder. So he checks the Ultramed Plus website and he sees that the photo is removed. Hy gebruik die Wayback Machine om 'n webblaaier te sien. So he uses the Wayback Machine to view archived pages. Hy ontdek dat Dr. Trollope gearresteer was vir kinderpornografie en homself in sy tronksel opgehang het. So he found out that Dr. Trollope was arrested for child pornography and he hung himself in the prison cell. Chapter 8, Hoofstuk 8, Donker Patrona. This chapter starts off with Greg overhearing a conversation between Chloe and her friends about baby making, and this kind of reminded Greg about something he read about Dr. Rion Trollope in a newspaper article, kind of reigniting his desire to know more about Dr. Trollope. In researching Dr. Trollope, Greg finds out that he was married to Mrs. Trollope, and Mrs. Trollope was involved in cancer fundraisers and just a whole bunch of stuff. And in one of those cancer fundraiser posters, her phone number, Mrs. Trollope, Dr. Trollope's ex-wife, was on the pamphlet. Greg decides to take it upon himself to use that number on the pamphlet and call Mrs. Trollope. However, Mrs. Trollope sounded incredibly drunk. One of the things she said to him is she said, "I want to hear nothing," or "I want nothing to do with that child-touching devil," talking about her ex-husband, Dr. Rion Trollope. Greg is pretty bummed out, like he's really frustrated because it's like every time he tries to figure out who the baker is, every time he gets closer to the answer, he feels like he's just getting nowhere. It's just a bunch of dead ends left, right and center. Metaphorically speaking, he's saying it's like a dark pattern, a donker patrona. So that concludes chapter 8, and now we're going to do a quick read through in Afrikaans and English, kind of explaining it. Greg lees meer oor mevrou Trollope. So Greg reads more about mevrou Trollope. Sy en Dr. Trollope was geskei. Her and Dr. Trollope were divorced. Sy was betrokke by 'n borskankerfondsensameling, so she was involved in a breast cancer fundraiser. Greg kry haar telefoonnommer daar, so he finds her phone number like on the breast cancer awareness poster. Hy bel haar, maar kry geen inligting nie. So he phones her, but he gets no useful information, and sy klink asof sy dronk is. She sounded drunk. Chapter 9, Hoofstuk 9, Een van ons. In this chapter, Greg's become incredibly friendly with one of his peers called Dane February, and Dane's brought up to Greg, "Hey, I know your past, I know your history, but it doesn't faze me, you're one of us at the end of the day, live your life." So Dane is evidently not too worried about Greg's past and Chris's past and the Owen history and Project Nursery Rhyme. However, later in the day, Greg meets up with Oom Dirk Schutter, Lisa's father, Plank's girlfriend's father, the policeman that forbid him from seeing Lisa. Oom Dirk admits to Greg that he did read up about him and his family history and said, "I'm really sorry for everything that happened. I shouldn't have told Lisa she's not allowed to see you. Lisa can see you and Plank again." However, Oom Dirk does ask Greg if he is still cyber-hacking, which Greg does admit to. So upon Greg admitting to the fact that he's still cyber-hacking, Oom Dirk does warn him, "Hey, this is a very bad idea and you should definitely stop doing this, just for the sake of Greg's safety." Later in the chapter, Oom Dirk brings up that him and Greg should go on a proper date, like just get to know each other, just be fine. And that concludes chapter 9. So rough translation, summary version, Oom Dirk kom Greg besoek, Uncle Dirk visits Greg. Hy het oor Greg gaan lees, he's read about Greg. Hy vra om verskoning oor wat by die galerie gebeur het. He apologizes for the altercation outside the gallery. Hy sê Plank en Lisa kan weer mekaar sien. He says that Plank and Lisa can go see each other again. But hy waarskuur Greg om op te hou met kubekraking. So he warns Greg to stop cyberhacking. Hoofstuk 10, Chapter 10, Courier. This is one of my favorite chapters because this is where the book takes a little bit of a turn. This chapter starts off with Plunk sending Greg a voice note saying how happy he is that he can finally see his girlfriend Lisa again. And as Greg starts walking back to the apartment, he can smell this undeniably smoky, fiery smell, like a wildfire is burnt out. But once he arrives at his apartment, he gets stopped by a security guard and handed over a package addressed to him. So he signs off on the package and hurries back to his apartment, which he is greeted with a warm cleanliness done by his cleaner Dorky. Eventually, Plunk comes over to the apartment, expressing to Greg that he is furious because he has found that Lisa has a Tinder account. Not very important, but pretty funny. Unfortunately, that did lead to another argument between Plunk and Lisa. On top of this, Plunk is trying to explain to Greg that there is a man outside in a black leather jacket, jeans and a helmet just watching the apartment. But Greg dismisses this. Greg then goes and opens the package that he just got, and inside this box was an envelope and a burnt book. And inside this book had some cryptic message, numbers, diagrams, and finally the word Valkyrie. And we then find out that the person who sent him this package was mevrou Trollope. That wraps up chapter 10, so a quick English to Afrikaans translation. Plunk and Lisa are arguing, Plunk's come over. Plunk also says that a man met 'n swart leerbytjie, jeans en valhelm hou Greg se woonstel dop. There is a man outside with a black leather jacket, jeans and a helmet watching Greg's apartment. A courier lewer 'n pakkie by Greg af. The courier delivers a package to Greg. In die pakkie is 'n koevert en 'n gebrande boek. In the package is a envelope and a burnt book. Mevrou Trollope het dit gestuur. Mevrou Trollope sent it. And that is the end of chapters 6 through 10.